Is the God of the Bible biting from our moon? Yeah, what's going on, party people in the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Padres, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? What's happening? I'm glad we all could be here this evening to yes, choose violence once again. And of course, when you decide to choose violence, you gotta have a shooter. You gotta have a shooter. And of course, when I speak about the shooter, I speak of none other than your brother and mine's MJ Jackson. What's going on, sir?
Hat tip to you, sir. I appreciate you inviting me back again. I feel like welcome family on your channel.
Of
Uh,
course, of course.
if you keep inviting me back, so I appreciate it. I haven't said nothing crazy too crazy just yet. So
Yeah, yeah. Yet is the operative word. Yes. So we always take a chance with MJ. You know what I mean? We always taking a chance. But you haven't failed us yet, so it's a good thing.
y'all can
So
y'all can take me out in public. I'm not going to embarrass nobody.
but so we're gonna continue, with our takedown and stripping away some of the accusations that we hear not only from the atheist community or maybe even the Hebrew community, but specifically here the conscious community. And as always, they love, their biggest critique is that we are nothing more than a poorly made carbon copy of ancient Egyptian religion. And they've talked about various gods, that Jesus is a ripoff of Horus, Jesus is a ripoff of Osiris. But today we're gonna focus on the god Amun. You know, does the God of the Bible, is he a ripoff? Is he biting, which is a old school hip hop reference? Biting is like biting someone's style, copying from the god Amun. So before we get into it, MJ, your preliminary thoughts on this subject matter.
Um, my thoughts is I think that what we're doing, what we've been doing since I think November, we've been kind of laying some groundwork and looking at the skeleton of this thing. Um, I think that we're removing the sensationalism out of it. We're taking the shock value away from it because a lot of times it's often said for shock value. And so when you walk up to like a baby Christian or somebody approach a baby Christian and show them this type of stuff, it might throw them off. Like, whoa, my pastor didn't tell me this. And then you have the Michael Todds and the Brian Carnes of the world, who I can guarantee you that they've never read this stuff either. They're very unlearned. And I don't say that as an elitist or anything like that. I say that because these dudes never been discipled. So you have this dual sword of a unbeliever trying to bring this to somebody to shock them. And
Hmm.
so I think what we're doing is, we're laying the groundwork where people can go back and look at a digital library of sorts, a digital, uh, you know, uh, where a digital footprint where you have, pretty much laid this out for people to go back and look.
Right.
And we're inoculating people to this madness, in a certain sense.
Okay.
So I appreciate what you've been doing. I appreciate the vision behind it. I'm pretty sure there is more. I'm pretty sure we could work our way up to Jesus in a sense. Jesus, Horus, Heru, and Asar, Osiris, or whatever. We can even look at those parallels and just really uh, dissect this thing and really put it down. But I was looking at the conversation between Shaka and Adam Coleman. And this is just one of the many reasons why, like, I really don't mind debating the issue or whatever, but it's really stupid. And we're just really demonstrating why it's pretty dumb. It's not a good argument.
Right, right. And again, nobody in the UA is running from this debate. Because he likes to make this claim that somehow Adam is running from having this specific conversation, and it's like, bro, we've shown time and time again why it's fruitless, because it's a landslide. It's like you cannot defend this at all, and I've done many videos showing that's the case. So it's like anybody in the UA can refute this. It's not a big thing. But again, I just want to be on record showing the refutation, so that those who might be taken aback by these certain critiques can look at these videos and look at these sources, and feel confident in the decision that one has made to make Jesus Lord of their life. That's really the bottom line. So with all that rigmarole and rhetoric, let's get into it. So we're gonna look at some portions of the Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible, second edition, Carol van der Toorn, Bob Beckling, Pieter W. van der Horst. So let's see what this has to say about Atum. It says Atum was a guy who had no father and no mother. He was mysterious as to his, like, supposed to be birth, because he was unbegotten and came into being by spontaneous self generation. We can end the video here,
Mhm.
like right here. Atum is a self created deity. Which means at one point Atum didn't exist. But yet somehow something that did not exist had the ability to make itself exist. Make it make sense. Just doesn't make sense. So off rip, we're done. But we're gonna continue, diving the dagger in and breaking off the handle. So in a manner characteristic of a creator god, Atum was a unity embracing both masculine and feminine elements. Right? Uh, Polarity is eminent in the primordial nature of Atum. In the same manner, creator goddesses like Isis and Neith were masculine for 2/3 in their nature and feminine for 1/3. Atum was a man woman. He, she. Atum is a he, she, a self created he, she. You see, you thought fluidity is a modern concept. No, 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 no. The gods of Egypt were very gender fluid. Atum, is a switch hitter. He swung from both sides of the plate, ladies and gentlemen. Um, I'm scared to give this to you, MJ, after saying that, but I'm feeling kind of brave. So go ahead, MJ. So speak on this.
Well, I'm gonna be a lot nicer than Vocab Malone.
Oh wow.
Um, I, I'm gonna be a lot nicer, but Vocab has a field day with the thought of ancient Kemet, right? And even in A&E, because if this dude is a creator, or if this he, she, it, whatever, is a creator, it's going to have to create in some type of way like human beings do, right? And so human beings to take a male and a female to create. So this person must have to be like the creature and create. So right here and now, we see something um, we see something prevalent within the Kemetic thought and the thought in the A&E, right? The thought in the societies around is that well, God is a glorified version of us, and you just don't see this in the biblical picture.
Right.
You just don't.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's continue. What else we do not see in the biblical picture? The actus then is just the act then is described as an act of masturbation. The god masturbated, swallowed his seed, and
Mm.
gave birth to his son Shu by spitting him out, and to his daughter Tefnut by vomiting her forth. So this is part of the creation myth of Atum. So Atum is a contingent being who didn't always existed. Somehow created itself from stuff that I guess was already here. Is both man and woman, and creates life by fondling him herself. And that's how we have these other deities. And it's interesting how in this dictionary it says that the son was made by spitting out, but the daughter was made by vomiting her forth. I wonder, that's interesting, right? Because we always hearing about how women are upheld in such high regard in ancient Kemet, but here she is vomited out of her dad as opposed to just being spit out. I, I mean, maybe I'm looking at it from a modern perspective. It just seems a bit odd that the daughter was made one way and the son the other. I'm just saying.
I can think of a worse way.
This guy, man. Anyway, let's continue. So this is from Old Testament parallels, laws, and stories from the ancient Near East. So this is the actual account of Atum, speaking. So this is Atum speaking about what's taking place here. I planned a multitude of living creatures. All were in my heart, and their children and their grandchildren. Then I copulated with my own fist. I masturbated with my own hand. I ejaculated into my own mouth. I exhaled Su the wind. I spat Tefnut the rain. Old man Nun, the sea reared them. I, the overseer, looked after them. So you heard it from the God himself, right? This is how he created humans. Excuse me, not even humans. These other deities who were his children. Does this sound like the Genesis account at all? Does
No,
he sound like the God of the Bible at all? Right? It's just, and and yes, this is a family show, but this is a statue with his erect phallus in the process of creating these other deities. I didn't make the statue. This is ancient Kemet. This is it. This is what they were doing. Looking like he's wearing the Affinity Gauntlet in his other hand. It's just what it is. I did not make this. So let's continue. Um, now this is interesting. This is from Introduction to the Bible by Christine Hayes. But in a text from Memphis, originating possibly in the Old Kingdom, but preserved in the 8th century copy, Atum's method of creation is ridiculed. This work, known as the Hymn to Ptah, contrasts Atum, the god of Heliopolis, with Ptah, the god of Memphis. Like a physical laborer, Atum works with material substances and engages in lower body sexual activities in order to create. By contrast, Ptah creates through upper body or intellectual functions, thought and speech. To create each member of the Enid, that is, the 9 deities worshipped at Heliopolis, and including Atum. So not only do we find it strange, other Kemetic deities find Atum strange too. And Ptah basically saying this dude is whack sauce. What are you talking about, fam? This is not how you do it, right? And in fact, it continues here. It says the text seeks to assert the preeminence of the new capital, Memphis, and its deity Ptah, and does so by asserting the latter's precedence over the gods of Heliopolis, the creator god Atum was himself created by the god Ptah, and the latter employed an entirely intellectual method of creation. Ptah creates the Enid with only teeth and lips. Actually, this is what Ptah is saying, right? So Ptah creates the Enid with only teeth and lips. Atum must create with hands and semen. Atum had to masturbate to bring forth the Enid. Ptah had only to speak, and the Enid came forth. So even within Kemetic spirituality, there's a beef. There's a disagreement about how things were made. Because Ptah is like, fam, you need to sit down somewhere, have several seats. The way you create things is beneath me. That you need to be carnal in order to create. I just say stuff and it happens. Which, right, sounds a lot closer to the God of the Bible. But even with Ptah, even though he's using words, he's using incantations.
Hmm.
He has to manipulate stuff in order to it to occur. Whereas Yahweh, there is no incantation. It just does his bidding as is. Your thoughts, MJ?
Yeah, like you just said, I mean, Ptah is still a self-generated being, which is a logical contradiction. And like I said, we can test worldviews by several tests. My favorite three is a test of reason, test of experience, test of practice. If this fails the test of reason, like I said, something cannot bring itself into existence because it has to first exist to do so. Um, but even the uh, the distinction here, the Chemetics were not monoliths. Okay, so there's not no one unified uh, Kemetic practice that can be harmonized with each other. No, these things are taking shots at one another, right? The Memphite theology is taking a shot at the creation story of Atum,
Mm-hmm.
and but the one constant between the both of them is that the first principle is the watery noon. That's the first principle in the Bible, in the biblical account. And I just want to say that it's quite interesting that um, the ancient biblical writers and the A&E writers had no problem attempting to give an explanation for how things came to be. Right? That's just something that I noticed during my studies this week. So I don't see anything wrong with a Christian using abduction in their apologetic process. But that's a different conversation for a different time. The first principle in the Bible is spirit. That's the first principle. Is spirit, and spirit is distinct from matter, right? And if you read in John 1, okay, God made everything. But what Genesis is talking about is how things were ordered. But even there, you see that the spirit of Yahweh, the spirit of God, is distinct and different and sovereign over all material and is not to be conflated. And so when things are conflated like that, you see confusion arises and logical contradictions taking place and things like that, which are red flags for anybody trying to critically think through these issues. But even if you think it's a myth, the Bible is of a radical different nature because you see God in the Bible possessing what systematic theologians call aseity, independence, and not to mention that God is holy and he doesn't have to do all that nasty stuff. Not to mention that. So, and God is not to be approached through magic or through sex. That'll get you killed. There you go.
Very good, very good. So let's continue. The combination of biological and intellectual methods of creation is stressed in the Memphite theology, which states that the need of Atum, the first nine deities created, came into existence through his seed and his fingers. but the need is the teeth and lips in this mouth that spoke the name of everything and from which Su and Tefnut came forth. Once the twins had been born, the sexual identity of Atum becomes fixed as father, which is interesting, right? So he was a he, she, but now he's settled into being a dad. Like, okay, fine. A further development was the personification of the hand of Atum as a goddess, thus giving him a sexual partner. Since the hand goddess came directly from the creator, she was his quote daughter as well as his consort. This is from the Handbook of Egyptian Mythology by Gwendolyn Pinch. Now, listen now, did I write this in the next one? Yes. All right. So, in the early 1900s, Fifi was used as a slang reference for an effeminate man. By the 1940s, the term was also a slur for gay. Fifi, sometimes appearing as Fifi Bag, has been found in prison slang throughout the US since at least 1972. It means vaginas constructed out of everyday materials used for masturbation. Why am I bringing this up? Because his hand became a goddess. And again, we hear, a lot of people in the conscious community extolling the virtues of the goddess, right? And the black woman is God. But the more we look at primary text, the goddesses are not faring too well in ancient Kemet. You know, the goddess here with Atum is a glorified Fifi bag. I'm just keeping it 100. This it's that's all she is. She's there to assist the copulation of these other deities. She herself is not a creator god. That's for the male deities in Kemet. So I'm just saying. So this whole thing about black woman being God, look at how the goddess is being, looked at. She is a divine Fifi bag.
Mm,
So much for the empowering of black women in ancient Egypt.
just a
So
means to an end.
I'm just saying, yeah, you're here to do a job, and that's it. So we're gonna look at a couple things from the Handbook of Egyptian Mythology. It says here, Atum, a creator deity who began and ended the world. Atum was the senior deity of the group of nine gods known as the Ennead of Heliopolis. When Atum became aware of his loneliness, he masturbated and impregnated himself with his own semen to produce the divine siblings Shu and Tefnut. Atum and Re were often regarded as the primordial and solar aspects of the creator. The joint deity Ra Atum, or Atum Ra, wore the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt to indicate his position as king of the gods. Within the daily solar cycle, Atum was the setting sun who becomes old every evening at the beginning and end of each of the great cycles of existence. Atum took form in the primeval waters as a snake or an eel. Atum and the Apophis serpent have been interpreted by some Egyptologists as the positive and negative forces within chaos. Let's focus on the part where it says when Atum became aware of his loneliness. So when someone becomes aware, that means there was a point in time that they were not aware. So much for him being all knowing. And then he was lonely. There was no one around. Our God is triune. Our God is not created and he's triune. There's no such thing as loneliness for Yahweh. He's always been one God, three persons. Each person is separate yet eternally God. There is no such thing as loneliness for Yahweh. But for Atum, he 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 figured it out one day. He's like, you know what? I'm by myself. For some reason, he didn't realize it too much later, but here we are. So again, I don't really see a one to one correlation here with Yahweh and Atum. Uh, the name Atum comes from a word meaning completeness or totality. The potential for all life was contained within Atum. When the primeval mound came into existence, Atum had a place to begin creation. He conceived and gave birth to the first two gendered deities as father and mother of the gods. Atum was the ultimate divine and royal ancestor. In the act of creation, Atum was shown in human form holding or sucking his erect penis. From the New Kingdom onward, the hand of Atum was personified as a goddess, usually Hathor, Nebet, Hetep, Hetepet, or Asus As. The image of the hand and the penis coming together to create life could be replaced by the concept of a divine union between male and female principles inherent in the creator. A hand of a tomb is also mentioned in magical texts as a powerful talisman to drive away evil. In Egyptian symbolism, beings and images often had dual sexual and apotropaic meanings. So, yeah. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be, crass and vulgar on purpose. This is their theology.
Yeah.
This is their theology. You know, autofellatio and divine fifi bags is part of their worldview. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You know, that's right, Michelle. None of this sounds good. None of this sounds kosher.
But what about the two white guys and a bird?
As if that's our theology. You know what I
It-
mean? It's like
it-
they love to bring that up, but why do they feel the need to bring that up?
because they feel the weight
Exactly.
or the heat or the embarrassment that's coming at them. Like it's not even a hint in our primary sources that sex is involved. Second of all, those pictures that we're referring to are likely medieval or pretty much from the medieval period. Nobody believes that Jesus looked like that. Nobody believes that. These Nobody believes that Jesus looked like what Caesar Borgia. Now
Right.
you might have a few white people believe that he's white and things like that, but we both know that that's a picture. But the bottom line is this is how the Egyptians thought that God creates. This is how the surrounding community thought that God creates, and you have this community, the nation of Israel, doing something entirely different. You cannot tell me that it's not unique. You cannot tell me that it's not different. You can try to find similarities and parallels, but the worldview that this emerges out of is different. And you have to be honest about that. It's an anomaly. It's different. It's different. And you brought up the point that this deity is not even aware. Well, one, the Bible teaches that God neither sleeps nor slumbers. The Bible teaches that God is all knowing. The Bible teaches that He knows the words before they're even on our lips. He knows our inward and outward parts. The Bible teaches that God is omniscient, that He's self-sufficient, independent. I think when Paul was talking to the folks at the Areopagus, he says that God is not, he does not live in houses or temples made by the hands of men, and needs nothing. He needs nothing from y'all. Y'all got it twisted. The living God doesn't need nothing.
Yep.
Yet it's a ripoff and a copy. All right. What that says is that you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
In layman's terms, in layman's terms, That's exactly right.
Do your research.
Do your research. Let's throw that statement right back at them because they love to tell us that, right? They love to tell us that. So, but let's see how Atum feels about humanity here. Says here, Shu, the god of air, and Tusnut, the goddess of moisture, the brother and sister, curious about the primeval waters that surrounded them, went to explore the waters and disappeared into darkness. Unable to bear his loss, Atum sent a fiery messenger, the Eye of Ra, to find his children. The tears of joy he shared upon their return were the first human beings. So he's a self created, gender fluid being who his own hand becomes a goddess slash divine Fifi bag in order to create life, or he commits autofellatio to impregnate himself, and then humanity is just a accident that occurs because of the joy he has of finding his actual children that he did make with intent and purpose. Humanity was not something that he set out to do. It just happened. Like how would you like how do you feel that imagine your parents coming to you and saying you was just an accident. We didn't plan on having you. We just had a couple of drinks, we was Netflix and chilling, and 9 months later here you are. Like, does that feel encouraging? If your parents ever told you that, but
Mm.
yet here we have Atum, the ultimate ancestor, saying that, yeah, well, you guys showed up, so here we are. I mean, is that how God describes the creation of man and woman? Because in the Genesis account, what does it say? It says that God made them in his image, the Imago Dei, the Salim, right? To be representative figures of him. He created us to represent him. This happened from an indirect consequence of his joy for the children he actually did intend of creating. So you're like a redheaded stepchild, humans. What do you think, MJ?
Yeah, humans are an accident, and once again, this is common in the neighbors surrounding uh, the Israelites. This was a common idea, but in the literature and the worldview of the Israelites, human beings were created for a purpose. There was intentionality behind their creations. God called the creation of human beings good. He commanded them to be fruitful, to multiply, to have dominion over the earth, to bring it under subjection and to subdue it. And we just don't see, once again, we just don't see that. Now we see Islam come quite a few thousand years later, about 500 to 600 years after the time of Christ, try to piggyback. Islam is a ripoff, obviously, but the same cannot be said for the biblical worldview ripping off its comedic neighbor. I mean, we have the issue with sex, we have the logical contradiction, we have the gross, perverse, pagan ideology of how things are created. You gotta use sex. And if a woman wasn't present, well, he just did it, took care of his business with his hand. That's pagan. That's one of the telltale signs of pagan thought is the use of sex to create, or for thinking that potency um, will emerge from the use of sex and things like potency and fertility, things like that. Sex has to be involved. Once again, we just don't see that with the biblical literature. So I ask once again, how is this a ripoff?
Right. And I like what Carter here says. In my view, you could tell these other religious stories are concocted by humans' own thoughts, intelligent men, but worldly human intelligence with limitation. Well, it's funny, right? Because a lot of times they will, maybe not the comedic community, but people who critique Christianity will say that, well, your God is made up. Like, well, if we wanted to make up our God, it will look more like the Egyptian gods or the Greco-Roman gods, because they're very similar to human beings, right? They're petty. They cheat on each other. They get jealous of one another, and they eke out revenge. They're very much like the humans that created them. Those are very much man-made deities. But Yahweh is completely void of all these petty things. He's literally above all that. You know. So, but that's it. That's all I wanted to share.
Back back to that. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
BK.
yeah, bro.
Back to his point. This is the difference between something that's revealed, revelation, and something that man concocted. Yes, the Bible says that men were moved. But once again, Revelation has a distinct fingerprint. It has a distinct fingerprint. And the fingerprint on the biblical revelation resembles nothing of the sort with the myths surrounding in the surrounding culture. That's the
Right,
difference.
right. And once again, when you look at the primary evidence of ancient Kemet, these accusations dissolve instantly. And of course, we now know where a lot of these talking points come from. You know, um, they come from the Hermetic tradition. The Theosophy, Rosicrucianism, which made its way into the Black and Brown communities in Harlem. You know, to our quote unquote top scholars who taught in legit universities in New York.
The Grand Dragons.
The grand there, yeah, those Grand Dragons.
Mhm.
Some of your favorite, comedic speakers get
Mhm.
the information not from Egypt, but from these other places. And this is where they get these accusations from. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so we're gonna keep this short because we're gonna do the bodega in a few minutes. So, but final thoughts, MJ, about this topic and just the stuff we've been talking about for the last few weeks.
Well, I hope that the folks people do watch this, right? And so we got to make sure that we tag this correctly so it get into the algorithm. But I know your stuff would be in the algorithm way more than mine. I still get comments daily on the video that I did regarding um, Anthony Browder,
Hmm.
Tony.
Tony.
uh, Men don't like to be called Tony, by the way, but I still get I still get comments daily. I got called the Oreo today.
Wow. You? Wow.
I was at work, so I just looked at it and chuckled. I'm like, Oreo. I said, okay, that's a first. That's a first. But
Wow.
people do watch this stuff, and I just hope that folks are seekers of knowledge and learn are seeking to think critically. I know for us as Christians, we are commanded not only to worship God with our body, not only to worship God in spirit, but also to worship Him in spirit and in truth. And that means to worship Him with our rational faculties. That means to worship Him with our mind. It means to be critical thinkers. And we're just thinking critically about this.
Right?
And number one, we see many logical contradictions, many violation of metaphysical principles within the literature of the Cometics or the Egyptians, however you want to say it. I'm not tripping on that. Second of all, the worldview is distinct that this stuff emerges out of. It emerges out of the worldview of continuity. Second of all, the nature of these deities are just radically different from what emerges in the Bible. You can say, as one brother liked to say, well, the European took it and distorted it, and so it's a copy, but it's a bad copy. Well, no. If anything is logically consistent, if you want to say it's a copy but a bad, it's a radical improvement and superior, if anything. But we can also see that the biblical writers were very much aware of what their neighbors believed, and the biblical writers took shots, big shots. They did violence. They did violence on an ancient level. So once again, I ask, how can this be a ripoff when we get down to the nitty gritty? Sex is not involved. Man is the goal of I wouldn't say man is the goal of creation per se, but man is not an afterthought of creation and is given a chief stewardship over creation to be vice regents of God on earth. You just don't get that in this other literature, but it's a copy and a cheap copy at that.
Mm.
Okay, keep saying that till you believe it, bruh. Keep saying that till your teeth turn white. But I got
Oh man, and you know, but again, they could keep saying it, and we're gonna keep refuting it. And my hope and prayer is that people will see and hear these arguments in defense of the gospel, and how we're shooting these claims down one by one, and not only shooting the claims, but showing you where the claims come from to begin with. And I just, again, once again, you have made the right decision if you decide to make Jesus Lord of your life. You did not, you're not worshiping a bad composite sketch of various deities. You are worshiping a God who is species unique, one of a kind, a one of one. And you've made the right decision, and never quiver in your convictions when it comes to that. And I'm hoping that these type of videos will help you stand on your square, and be certain of the salvation that you have received. And with that, we're gonna let you go, and we'll be back in a few minutes with the bodega. Um, yeah. So with that being said, MJ Jackson, BK, catch you in a few. Peace.